Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's record review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who doesn't have anything to review. You see, I like the weekend shows to be my sort of highest profile videos, and when I heard that Kanye was releasing his album Donda, I was really excited. If you don't know, on my channel I've done a lot of videos about Kanye. I believe everything about Kanye that Kanye says he believes about himself. That he's the greatest living artist, that he's the greatest artist right now, all those great things about him being a big brain genius and all that. I believe that entirely. If you're curious, why don't you look at some of my older videos up there? There you go. So I love Kanye, I enjoy Kanye, I love studying Kanye, and here it was, I was on vacation last week, I was in Boston, and I had tickets to see the Red Sox and Yankees on Thursday. I'm from Boston, so I'm a big Red Sox fan. And like, my excitement of going to Fenway Park and showing my wife her first baseball game was completely overshadowed by the excitement of Donda. Like a new Kanye album is unlike anything else. When it comes out, everybody's excited. What's he going to do? What's going to happen? And I was told it was going to be released on Friday. And now a lot of people have made videos about this and made jokes about how we're all clowns. Oh, we're clowns for believing him. I want to get into that later. Explain that if you think you're a clown, you're actually probably just a baby. But I was so excited because I was going to be having this 7-hour road trip back to Rochester, New York, where I live, and I was going to have this new Kanye album to digest and listen to it over and over and over and over again. And my wife, she's come to love Kanye too, or at least tolerate Kanye, and we were going to have this wonderful experience. But like many others, I kept refreshing and kept refreshing and kept refreshing until last night, thanks to the excellent coverage from the Watching the Throne YouTube channel, I learned that he's not releasing till August 4th. And so, my wife said, "Oh, you must be disappointed." And I thought about this. Am I disappointed? Is disappointed the word for how I felt learning that I'm not going to get to review Donda this weekend? I don't think so. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why I am not disappointed that Donda did not release when I thought it would, when it would have been the perfect time. We're picking up my kids from camp today. We could have listened to the album for the first time with them, in the car, driving in the sunlight in the summer, and yay, Yeezy season approaching. Why am I not more disappointed? Well, number 1, very early in his career, Kanye told us we should be honored by his lateness. I think that's true, and it's funny. Number 2 is a little bit more of a complicated theory that I've been working on. Not hearing a Kanye album is part of hearing a Kanye album. I'm not just talking about all of his unreleased stuff. I'm talking about this kind of excitement that he has and he's able to build. The delays that are built into his albums. The idea that for his last few albums, he has a big release party and then we don't have it. I think I want to get very sort of philosophical, literary theoretical with you. I am legitimately a professor of French, and because of that, I've studied a lot of literary theory. I want to introduce you to the concept, or perhaps reintroduce you to the concept of paratext, which was sort of coined by Gerard Jarnet, who's a very interesting, a very difficult to read but good literary theorist out of France. And in the 80s, he came up with this concept of paratext. Now, he generally applies it to literature, not to other forms of media, but I think it works quite well. And it's about the added elements which kind of frame the text or frame the work. And those elements can change the interpretation of what it is we're reading or watching or listening to. The examples he'll sometimes give are the cover of a book, the page quality of a book. How does it change if you read Moby Dick entirely in Comic Sans font? What would it mean to you? Okay, like what do these things communicate to us, and how does that change the way we interpret a text? This moment of waiting that Kanye builds into all of his albums, this anticipation, I think is a form of paratext. Waiting for Donda is part of listening to Donda. On a side note, Kanye is great at paratext, at presenting things which very clearly communicate the album. When I was in Boston, I went to the Virgil Abloh exhibit, which was outstanding. I suggest you go. And they had a gigantic recreation of the Yeezus album cover, which he made with Kanye. You know, the simplicity of that communicated everything of the album just in the way it was presented. I think in a similar way, the Jesus is King album communicated the same thing, like the same kind of simplicity, except instead of him being the center, it was his relationship with Jesus that was at the center. And I think we need to appreciate Kanye as a master of paratext, but not in terms of like the actual objects, but the things that go way beyond the music that we listen to. Like the fact that he is the first person, as far as I can tell, who really understands what happened when music became streaming. When he released Life of Pablo, which is, by the way, the reason that I still have Tidal to this day. When I came out, I got Tidal. When that album came out, and he kept changing it. He kept changing his own music because he could. That became this weird moment where we had a text, we had an object to study and to listen to and to love, and it kept changing. And it kept changing because he could change it. So right now he's making this album, and we've heard, or we know of two different versions at least. A version that he played in Las Vegas, a version that he played in Atlanta. They aren't at all the same. What are they? This confusion, this excitement, which first of all, basically only he is capable of inciting this kind of excitement. But beyond that, just like this whole moment, this chaos of creation that we're witnessing is 100% going to influence the way that we hear the album. If this was, I don't know, Lorde coming out with her album later this month or whatever it is, or later this summer, and you know there's going to be a rollout and a press junket and everything. We know exactly how it's going to go, and it's a nice, tidy, capitalist product that we can buy and purchase and enjoy, and I'm sure it's going to be a great album, which may even be better than Donda. Who knows? But what Kanye does is just completely fragment us, completely take us apart, and leave us in this weird state of limbo. That informs the way we listen to his music, at least since Life of Pablo. The third reason I'm not disappointed is because, as I say in all of my videos about Kanye, Kanye is an amazing artist. I was walking around with a friend of my wife's who didn't know much about Kanye, and I explained this to him, you know. He's not a top 20, he's not a top 50 rapper. He's not a top 10 producer. He's not a top 100 like fashion designer. Like nothing that he does is he the top, but the way that he does it, everything put together makes him, I believe, the best and most important artist who's capable of changing society by what it is that he does. So in that way, when I think about being disappointed, not being disappointed, I'm reminded of probably the only other American artist I can think of who's been working in my lifetime who I could compare to him, which would be George Lucas. You know, George Lucas made Star Wars movies in the time that he wanted to make them. And once they were done, he changed them how he wanted to change them. He was doing what Kanye did with Life of Pablo, but with his own movies and his own art. In both cases, we have these absolute giants where everything they do is watched and is carefully looked at and obsessed over, but yet they somehow manage to be above that obsession, to not give into it, to not give in to the fans, to not feel that they owe their fans anything. Because newsflash, artists don't owe their public anything. If they're artists, they owe it to themselves. If we choose to enjoy their art, then we will. That's how art stays good. That's how art stays interesting. So while that was my copy of Understanding Media, which I put back there trying to be clever because I'm talking about the difference between like physical media and streaming media, but it fell off and hit my guitar and scared me and probably the dogs as well. So, you know, like that's why when Kanye doesn't release an album, I don't listen to it. I've never heard Yandhi. I want to hear it so bad. The whole lost album of Kanye's music, my favorite musician, but I'm not going to. He says no, I say no. I'm not going to try to track down some kind of crazy streaming version or some bootleg whatever of whatever was played in Atlanta. I didn't even watch the thing in Atlanta, not just because I was at the Red Sox game. The thing is this. I'm not disappointed in Kanye not releasing the album. And I also won't be disappointed by the album itself, no matter what it is. Because with great artists, we should not expect. We should know better than to expect. And I'm not even saying, you can't expect the unexpected. I'm not saying that. He might release a totally pedestrian album. He might release Jesus is King Part 2. The beats might be lame. It might be very clearly trying to be the next Yeezus. Who knows what it is? But the way to treat art, in my opinion, in this way is just to just hear it, just get it, and then deal with it. Whatever changes were made, we just have to deal with it and live with it. I think of other musicians that I put in the same class as Kanye. There's not many. Daft Punk, a very similar way. You never quite know what they're going to do. I was disappointed by their album, Human After All, but it wasn't because I was expecting them to do something different or great or whatever. I just didn't like it that much. In a similar way, Radiohead's King of Limbs. Even Kanye disappointed me with his Pablo tour, which was so bad that I left. I left the stadium. I saw the Yeezus tour, one of my favorite concerts of all time. I saw the Pablo tour, and I thought it was terrible. But the thing is, with an artist like Kanye, is when you see something and you think it's terrible, it doesn't matter. It's not like, oh, he's over. Oh, it's finished. It's just like, yeah, that particular idea that was his idea, that he executed to his best of his ability, wasn't great. But we always get that internal drive of an artist. I like to say, I miss the new Kanye. If I could, I'd make a t-shirt that would say that. Meaning, whatever Kanye is going to be next is the thing that I miss. I don't miss the old Kanye. I don't miss the old Kanye 20 years ago, 5 years ago. So yeah, so I'm not even going to watch the show in Atlanta. I'm interested in it. I think it's great that he does these listening parties. Because it reminds me of that funny story that Aziz Ansari tells in his stand-up specials about hanging out with Kanye. And when you hang out with Kanye, he just plays his own music for you. He's like, why are you playing this music? He's like, these beats are dope. Like, that's how much Kanye loves his own music, that he just wants to share it with 40,000 people. I don't even think it's necessarily a marketing ploy. It's interesting, hearing the stories. Again, if you haven't watched the coverage from Watching the Throne, I suggest it. If you're like a super Kanye head, those guys are great. That it was so loud that people couldn't hear anything. Like, it was so loud and blown out, and he's wearing a mask and doing all these things and just making everybody feel so lost. I think it's funny because I also watched the coverage from Hot 97 in New York, and they were just saying, like, if you're going to do this, Kanye, you have to bring the heat. You can't just give us anything. And I don't think that's true. I think he can just bring us whatever it is he's bringing us. So going back to the question of the clown makeup, I don't think you should think that you're wearing clown makeup if you keep swiping and hoping to see Spotify. Maybe the worst would be, Lucy and Charlie Brown, Charlie Brown trying to kick the football. But if you're actually upset at Kanye for this, I'd probably say more just kind of a baby makeup thing. Because you're not making a fool, you're just sort of not appreciating or understanding the way that this artist has always worked. And that he chooses to frame his own work in chaos and multiple versions, in leaks and drips and drabs and hearsay and everything. So there you go. Oh, I'm going to make one prediction. And I don't know we'll see if this comes through. So it's pretty, the video I made about Jesus is King, or one of the, everything's falling around me. One of the videos that I made was about how that album is about his father. I think Jesus is King is very much just about his relationship with his father. So I think the fact that he's making an album calling it Donda, I think it's going to be spiritually the pair, the mother and the father, in one, in back-to-back albums. But I don't know, that's just my prediction that that'll be the title of my video when the album does come out on August 32nd. Okay, well, it's time for me to go pick up my kids at camp and not listen. Oh, I do want to, look at this. Have you seen this? I haven't shown this to you yet. This is a custom Jesus is King sweatshirt made in the style of Video Game Donkey that my very good friend Stella made. And I just thought I'd show it off because she made that for my birthday because she knew how much I love Video Game Donkey and Kanye. And it is a very funny sweatshirt. I almost wore it, but it's too hot today. All right, there's the camera.